because of the cement canal, they're gonna have to fill.
Goes east from the school, going past 4,000.
Then they take out the church, they go
Well,
west.
they kind of made it sound like maybe west till they get past this where the cement canal is.
So they go-
Till it past the cement canal, and then it would go east because they've already purchased all that land.
Right.
But he said he will let us know. Like they said, when this gets further on in the study, they would come and meet with us, and because I told them that's really what we need. How do we plan if we don't know?
Right.
You know.
And another good thing would be to inform the citizens
Mhm.
as soon as possible when we have, I guess, because like I found out that they were even thinking of 5,100 initially back in the 90s when I read it in the newspaper.
Yeah.
In fact, it was front page news. And
Yeah.
all of us on 51 were like, what is this?
Yeah.
We've never even heard of this. So
Yeah,
I
it
think
would be
that
good. Yeah, he said that they did the original alignment study 2006 to 2009, but they had lots of different. He showed the map,
Yeah.
and there, and he said, you know, really, because someone specifically said, "Okay, have you pretty much have?" And he said 5,100. He said it really hasn't varied from 5,100 now for quite some time. But anyway, that's the thing. They just need to let us know. You know, just as we said, just keep us as informed as you possibly can. So that was the only other thing. I just had a supporting licensee.
They
Okay.
call it SR 177.
SR 177. He said that's what it is. He said, you know, it gets called a lot of other, I've been calling it West Weaver Corridor because I figured if it's Davis Corridor, it's
I've been calling it
Weaver.
Legacy since they first named it that.
Yeah.
back in the 90s.
yeah. So okay. Let's see. I think Rita had a couple of
Couple of issues. One of course is involving Brandon. Some of you may have heard that Brandon was selected to be domestic relations commissioner, which is in essence a judge that handles he handles a variety of domestic violence, protective orders. Most of the divorces will go through him, separations. He does the mental health hearings for people who have been committed mental health mandatory treatment. And he may do some criminal arraignments or criminal preliminary hearings. But at any rate, what that is a state position, and he can't do anything else.
Congratulations.
Yeah, kind of a cool deal. It's in fact, that's a real cool deal. There were probably 50 people that applied, and he ended up getting it. So that was great.
That's awesome.
So, but at any rate, he won't be doing work here. So that presents a couple of issues. The most immediate one is he was doing all the criminal work for the city. So you probably don't even know about that, but every time there's a ticket written or some type of criminal activity investigated by the police, that all goes through your city prosecution. And that is something that is ongoing in many cases, trial set, hearing set, sentencing set. So that's not the kind of thing that I do anymore. I did that in my younger years for nothing anymore. So we reached out to the county attorney. A lot of the deputy county attorneys do that type of work in cities all around the county, and asked if they had a suggestion. Chris Alder's a pretty good friend. He's the county attorney. So we asked him if he's got any suggestions to somebody to do the work out here. His suggestion was Brandon Miles, and Brandon apparently lives in Hooper. I didn't realize that. Across the street right here. Is it a fairly new house?
Oh, yeah.
Brandon,
Mhm.
okay. But at any rate, he was excited about the opportunity. And so my thought is that you just hire him under me, although I wouldn't really tell him anything. Doesn't better than I would. And if we ever change my position, find out if we can find somebody who wants to do both. But I think you'd be very happy with Brandon. I think he'd be willing to start right up and would be an easy transition. You're all okay with it.
And that's okay.
And then
he lives in the city. Doesn't.
Well, it creates some problems when you know some of the people, but probably not too.
Okay.
He's so new, he might not, because he's had it for that long, but he might, I don't know that
Well, I
he,
mean, that happens.
yeah.
Everything.
Yeah, if he'd been to school here and lived here with all the folks, it might have been harder, but I don't think that's true.
Yeah.
Great, because the name's the same.
Yes,
Yeah.
Brandon.
So
Yeah.
we can just say Brandon and
Yeah.
we don't have to change names.
Yeah.
And as to myself, I'm happy to stay on for a while and let's get things through some of these challenges we've got right now. But long-term, I would point that I'm not wanting to do it all, so. Sometime in the next few months, we'll want to look around, but let's get through some of the things like the stuff you have on tonight, and then we'll see where that goes. If that's all right with all of you.
Sounds good.
Okay,
Along that juncture, one of the cases that Brandon's been handling is the Runchester, whatever the people's name is, the guy that wants to split his lots. into Renovista. Renovista.
That's
And that is actual litigation, so the choices are, we can switch that over to the insurance. And they've got several of the cases already, so I'm reluctant to send them another one, but, or if you want to consider again, just letting him have his 2 lots, I don't know that that's a bad choice, Frank. He's already got 2 houses, doesn't he? Can he build
I think he just remodeled it.
He remodeled it.
Yeah, he didn't build the house.
So I
applied for an
He applied for an ADU, but did.
Oh, he didn't actually build the.
No, I don't think so.
So anyway, that's a thought. If you want to settle it, we can settle it. If not, we better send it to the insurance and let them pick it up. I think there are arguments both ways. It certainly is a hassle. The thing he wants to do immediately is depose 3 of you. So you're going to spend the day in depositions, and I think that's these 3.
Mhm.
I'm not sure what he wants. I don't know why he wouldn't want the other 2 of you, since you all made the decisions, but those are the 3. Oh, did you vote the other way? Okay. So my suggestion would be, I know it's against the grain of your feelings, but just sell it and get rid of them. But
It just feels like, people, if they don't like a decision, then they throw a tantrum to get what they want. And it's so wrong because it feels almost like it sets a precedence for it. Well, you can do this if you don't get the answer that you want, because we made the decision on a very solid ground. And, it was not made lightly. And, we had good reason because of the zoning. And
Zoning didn't have anything to do with it.
Uh-huh.
The zoning allowed it.
the zoning didn't allow
The
it.
land use map allowed it.
I don't believe the land use did allow it.
Wasn't it 1 acre lot?
Yeah, it was.
It is now, but at the time it wasn't. It was before we did the general plan.
Oh, during the general
It
plan.
was before we reached the current general plan. So the land use wasn't half acre.
Because when I voted.
land
on
use,
it-
but not zone.
Correct.
Yeah, when I voted on it, the land use map showed that it was acre lots.
That probably after the general plan change.
After the change, it went to.
Yeah,
So
because
this would have been way before if we voted on the general.
So I guess they're having me because Cindy Cox isn't here. Because I didn't make a decision on it.
Oh, that's true. You wouldn't have voted, so I don't know why they want you. Just want to harass you. I don't know.
I guess we can look at it again.
yeah, we can.
So I can delay the whole thing by saying that you're willing to reconsider and asking to send in
Okay, well,
his reasons again, and you can take a look at it again.
I,
It is a different council slightly, because you're right, you didn't vote, so you
yeah.
get.
To me, that was what I based my vote on, so I'll have to look at that actually. Because so he asked for this like the first few minutes of my term. But in
So it may have been
2021.
before you even came in.
No, you were here. But
Yeah,
it was pretty.
Because it would have been like the first few months of
Yeah, it was
2021.
pretty early on.
And then we ratified the general plan just after that.
Yeah. It was in the spring, we did the general plan, and
Okay.
he came up in January. I think.
Yeah, I'll have to look at the dates. So.
Let me take a look at all of that, and actually, you can put that on, well, I don't know if you need to put it on the council agenda, but bring it back to this week at some point.
Okay.
So would that be something that would have to be a motion made? You don't think it would, or just?
Well,
it
so
could be-
I'll contact him and tell him you're willing to reconsider. If you decide you want to do it, then we probably want a motion to settle the lawsuit.
Okay,
What's he looking for mediation?
Nothing.
What's what it is?
Just the division.
He doesn't want to wait. Because
He just wants to be able to do it.
doesn't want that.
Well, he wants money from selling land, I'm sure.
Right.
Well, and that would be part of it.
Yeah.
He probably is, he's probably asked for attorney fees and costs also.
Mhm.
But he would be very happy just to back off.
Okay. Okay, yeah, because, and then that's just on this, because we received this because it said we no longer had, well, because Brandon no longer was doing it, so.
Well, he
we'll
has
talk
to for all counsel in every case that he's currently involved in, so that's what.
Yeah.
But I
Yeah,
sent the guy a note saying we're looking at it, so he's on.
okay, good. Okay. Okay, well, thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, so, agenda items, any questions? I had mentioned to Bryce if he'll just tell a little bit about the approval of the purchase of the emergency preparedness trailer. We'd already talked about it, and I told Cammie everybody was agreeable to it, and she said, well, because it wasn't something that was specifically in the budget, that we needed to have a motion for that. So any questions on that for Bryce, or anything you want him to explain about that before
Do you want
we?
me to tell you about it? Yes. So the original price was, well, first of all, let me kind of back up. So this trailer, what it consists of, it's part of our emergency preparedness plan. And each city has what's called like a cash box or something. And in that, they have supplies for emergency, whatever that might be stretcher boards, bandages, whatever. Ours, over the last 20 years, has been up at Rocky Mountain Junior High School. And I guess stuff is really bad and we can't get into it. Anyway, there's some issues with that. And I think West Haven, I think we shared with West Haven. And they actually built, from my understanding, they built a shed or a couple sheds to house. No, they actually got a trailer, I believe, to house their stuff. So we're kind of on our own. So to fulfill kind of this need, I told Dave to go look for a trailer that would be mobile, but have that stuff. And so we found one. It's red. It's like 26 feet long. He paid 12. He was asking 14.5, and I think we ended up paying 12.5. But it's outfitted with electrical plugs on the outside, so you can hook up a generator. It's got a inverter inside. It's got 110 outlets inside. It's got a breaker box, so it's set up for what we need. So we can have a command post type thing. It's got shelving and stuff. So that's going to fulfill our need for some of the emergency preparedness stuff that really Weber County and FEMA is wanting us to do, to be proactive. So he went ahead and purchased it with his own money, so he wouldn't lose it. He did not title it. It's not titled. So we need to reimburse him the 12.5 plus I think it was $22 or $25 that he put it on his insurance for a month. So I can't take it off because it'd be $50 to cancel it. And then he had to go, I'm going to text him real quick, and he had to drive somewhere to pick it up. I don't know if it was Lehigh or whatever, so he might have some mile reimbursement. So I don't know the exact amount, but it's under 13,000. So, and those funds are coming from that 5% we've been saving in the utility tax. That's why I did it for this purpose. So when these opportunities came up, and Dave's done a great job. He's went way above and beyond what I expected, and he's really kind of put us at the next level, I think. So that's what that would be. So I'm going to ask for your, support on paying him back. If not, he's just going to sell it,
Well, I think it'd be great for the city. I think
Yeah.
hopefully you'll support this, because I think it's something that we should have. So, and I think we've kind of talked about that before, if there's an emergency, not that there won't be help coming, but we won't be one of the first places they'll come. So any of this emergency preparedness we can do on our own. So do you have any questions for Bryce? And again, it's an agenda item, so we can talk about it if anybody. Anna? Okay. One thing on the resolution for the interlocal agreement for the technical forensic services, which is CSI. So I had Reed review this interlocal, and then I actually called over to the sheriff's department and got some clarification on it. Because one question we had was the amount that they had in this interlocal agreement, was it in addition to our contract? It is not, it's included in our contract. But the reason why it's worded that way is because not every city within Weber County that uses CSI does have they're not a contract city. So for example, like North Ogden, South Ogden, Pleasant View that have their own police departments have to pay that additional amount. So they did verify with me that we sign it interlocal. It's what we've always done, but it's not an additional amount. It's not an increase in cost.
Part of our sheriff's contract.
Yes,
And they'll
yes,
determine the division based on the same formula. Using the contract.
yes. Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Yeah.
Just a little few words.
Yeah, well, so I called one of the other mayors and said, okay, we had this and anyway, and he said, you know what, you're like the third mayor that's called me on this. So then but anyway, the sheriff's department, she ended up sending us out some clarification on it. So, yeah. So I think that's something, I mean, that's
I
something,
looked at the contract, nothing wrong with the contract. Just seemed odd that they want you to pay if you're already paying.
yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so
Certainly not.
one thing too, on amending the existing subdivision fence, I also talked to Reed about this because we had questioned last meeting about having the letter.
Yeah, here's the deal. You remember you passed the ordinance that says that subdivisions, unless they are multifamily and so forth, they're all done at planning commission level. Well, one of the conditions of approval of subdivision is that they have the approval on the fence. Well, if planning commission can approve the subdivision, but it's not valid until the city council approves the fence, you really can't do what you want to do. So you really have to make that simple change of just saying fence approval is now up to them, since you'll never see those subdivisions.
And then we talked about the letter, because we never had a letter, didn't you say in part of our ordinance? But that's more of a policy.
You can certainly put that in the policy. You could put it in the ordinance, but it's never been there. That's just. So it seemed to me that's maybe building policies or subdivision policies that you have.
Good.
Yeah, because then they could, just when they have to go meet with the technical review committee, that they make sure that they have that letter. So then when it comes to planning commission, they can say, yes, we have the letter, which is, I think, what they've done in the past.
Are they doing, is planning commission creating some regulations on subdivisions or something? Seems like they're doing something.
Just kind of-
Yeah, they have tried.
Check. Station cleanness.
Okay, so that would be the place to put it, something like that.
Yeah.
I know they're working on the policy and procedures too, if that is what you're talking about.
That may be what I'm getting at.
Yeah, so
So this motion then is just to move that to the planning commission?
this motion is just for us to approve that ordinance, saying that now this is yes, what you said, yeah.
Yeah.
So planning commission's the one that improves
If
it.
you look at the ordinance, it's a one word.
Yeah.
Planning commission says.
Yeah. We didn't even realize that until it came up and we thought, well, that didn't make any sense because there was no reason for it to come to us. That should just be only going to planning commission.
Well, and it may be violation of state. If they say
Yeah,
approval has to go to the planning commission, this really makes it city council.
okay. Any questions on tonight? We're going to have the discussion motion for rezone request for Terra Strata. Anybody have any questions, discussion on that? You want to?
I have one learning question. That should be in everybody's mind. It's how do we move forward or even entertain a motion like this when it goes against our land use policy? It's on the general plan. This isn't even allowed right now. Like, you don't need to open the general plan.
Yeah, what you can't, you can't actually approve the subdivision because you're right. You've got to do a rezone, you've got to do a change in the map, and you've also got to do a change in some of the wording in the general plan. So my thought, and I talked to Malcolm about this, and I think we're on the same page, would be if you're favorable to what they want to do, you just say, we conceptually are okay, but changes need to be made so that we can actually.
So the reason it can't be approved
Cannot be approved.
tonight.
But you can indicate that you're willing to let them do it when changes are made so that we don't put their people and our people do a whole lot of work, unless it's in.
So
And
in
they approve it with conditions.
the motion, well, no, the rezone can be approved, period. I mean, the concept can be approved with whatever conditions we come up with that we've talked about before, but the rezone is off the table tonight. Because it's not allowable.
You can't rezone until you
Without a public
change the
hearing.
map. No, you already had the public hearings.
Yeah.
Just the change to the general plan land use map. It's not allowable.
So in our, because I just had Malcolm pull that up for me, and I think, do you say it was like 10-5-4 or something? We do have in our ordinance that we can open the general plan, do a rezone, close the general plan, all in the same motion.
But it has to be on the agenda to do so. And it's not.
So what are you guys saying?
I'm saying I can't rezone tonight.
Well, he's saying improve conceptually what they want to do, which I think is what they're looking for.
Yeah,
With the understanding that then we'll come back the next meeting or a subsequent meeting and make the changes necessary to go around that.
Correct.
So we could make a motion conceptually with some conditions tonight, right?
Yeah, the concept.
Yeah, okay.
well, and part of that too, we talked about was with the developers agreement too, you know, because when we've been cautioned this with other cities, you never want to just say, we are giving you a rezone until we actually have a developers agreement, so we know what it is.
That's another factor that would be important to have when you
Yes.
do the final thing. So I think we're not looking to do it tomorrow. I think you're, but again, there's a whole lot of work that's gonna go into that development agreement.
Right.
There's a fair amount of work that's gonna go into the changes in the general plan and the general plan map. And then there's the rezone. And let's not do all of that unless all of you are in court, you want to do it.
Well, step A was we got a recommendation from the planning commission. We need to decide what we're gonna do with that recommendation tonight.
Yeah,
So we either say we're okay with this concept or add some things to it, take away some things to it. And, you know, like Reed said, there's a lot of work to be wasted if we just said no, you know, so I think we just need to be careful not to approve a rezone tonight.
Well, you can't do that.
We can't do it.
We got this our wording just right.
so we do need to, though, like you're saying, Ryan, have something that we could suggest. I mean, we can make. So is there any motion at all that we make tonight that we can say we accept the recommendation by planning commission with the conditions of, or
Well, you
I
can't
guess I-
grant you can't grant the rezone until the maps change. What you can do is say, we like if you do, we like the recommendation of the planning commission. We, fully intend to move forward with the project. We give direction to our staff to do whatever we need to do, so that we can do a final approval of this sometime in the near future. And that would include, I think, a change in the general plan somewhat, a change in the map, certainly for two things, to cover the housing part and also to make it clear that the commercial is within the area that you indicated is pretty vague as to how close it has to be to the highway. And third, then there'll be a reason. So those things, and to create an agreement, an overall agreement, development agreement on the whole thing that you can all review when you do the approval. So I think that's reasonable. For sure.
do you think it would be beneficial for us to give them so they kind of have somewhere to go? Like, because I know when we met, you know, I kind of talked about it. There's been thrown out having it all be patio homes. You'd mentioned about the 1/3 acre, 1/2 acre, some mixed use. Would it be beneficial if tonight we could at least give them our recommendation of what we think? So as they go forward, because it's like we said before, you know, Malcolm, they don't want to spend hours and hours doing something if it's not something that you are even going to be agreeable to.
Well, not only that, but that, are they? gonna-
Yes, 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 yeah.
So then, in that motion, we just tell them what we like, and then it's the ball's in their court, so to speak.
I look at this maybe as, you know, when there was the one meeting when Alan Karras came and asked about possibly buying that little piece of ground. And they didn't really want to spend a lot of money if they didn't somewhat have our, and so we said, yes, we're agreeable to that. And then they proceeded. Is that what you're looking at that tonight? So we have some kind of motion saying, yes, we're agreeable, maybe with these, and then so at least I'd have something to work
I
on.
think there's no question that they're looking around where they're gonna build, they're gonna build a place somewhere. And they want some understanding that this is gonna be the place, or they're gonna be going somewhere. I think they're entitled to it. It's been long
Yeah.
enough.
Yeah, I think so too. Well, so is that something you want to discuss now? So we kind of have some recommendations for them. What are your thoughts on what your recommendations are?
Well, the planning commission had quite a few good recommendations. You know, the things that they listed, I felt were well thought out. And, you know, there are a few things that I would add to that, change a little bit.
So what are you even thinking as far as what type? Like, you know, like Debbie, you'd mentioned third and half. It was brought up all patio. What are your thoughts of that as far as recommending to them what you would like to see for even the housing?
Well, the way that I see it, they wouldn't get as many houses in, which I don't know if they'd be agreeable to. I'd like to see some larger lots thrown in with what they're proposing. But I know that their main goal is to get as many homes in as they can because profits are very important to them. So I don't know if they would be agreeable to something that I'm thinking would be better for the area as far as the surrounding homes, you know, the surrounding residents. That's the surrounding residents would be happier. And so that's what I'm thinking of. I don't know.
So is the drive or the push, maybe it's like you said, monetary, you know, to have so many homes in there or more slab, commercial, whatever areas. I just up in Heber and, well, they had a Smith's, but they moved. And they do have their little gas station thing in there and then one little tiny spot. I'm sure they're gonna do a couple more, of little slab commercial things. But I didn't see anywhere where they're gonna be doing homes by it. So like, is it just a conditional thing? You know, if you don't let us do homes, we don't wanna do it? Or is that, do they think they're giving us a gift by saying, hey, we'll build you these homes in here for your residents?
So they discussed with that case, we came in out, so letting that figure that you would have.
Yeah,
Then we pushed a quarter acre.
on the west.
What conditions was third.
Third, and they said they'd be agreeable to
Mark,
that.
Mark, we clarify that if there's, probably something you wanna.
Yeah,
So that was the potential homes was adjacent to what's already there.
Okay.
I think that the thing to keep in mind is that all the rhetoric we heard out of the governor's office. And I say rhetoric, I think he's dead serious, that he's gonna force cities into having affordable housing. And if this solves that for your city, seems to me that's good.
Well, I asked him point blank at one meeting, I asked him if he was going to include affordable housing. He said that really wasn't what he was looking to do.
Our patio homes.
I don't know.
was
Now,
gonna
he
say,
may have changed it.
Define affordable.
Yeah.
housing.
And he may have changed it, but I said,
Everyone looks at
quantity.
yeah.
But he had told me that that wasn't really their goal right now. And
It
so.
would be nice if it could be though, huh?
Yes.
That we got some of that.
If he did it.
And it, yeah,
But see these patio homes over here. They don't solve.
so affordable now even, which is,
Or something.
yeah,
Well,
Yeah.
the state has kind of a criteria for affordable. It's like,
Mhm.
there's a threshold, I think, of 400,000 and there's
yeah.
one-time down payment money, that kind of thing. So, you know, we could ask him that a portion of that would fulfill that need. That would help. I think the big issue that I think all of us with this project, you know, I'll just bring it up and we probably ought to talk about it and talk about the pros and cons is the CRA. And so basically, What that is a funding mechanism to provide infrastructure in an area. But it's taken from tax revenue that should come to the city. So, looking at that, you know, LRB's done some projections of the forecasting, and they're pretty good, pretty accurate at what they do. That would, in my mind, I know we're supposed to, I hear this all the time. We need to develop and grow responsibly. And I totally agree. Going right out of the gate and being $2 million in debt, just like that, is not responsible in my mind. So in this study, all the taxing entities participate. So you've got the school district, you've got the fire, you've got Weber County, everybody participates, and the city. And the funds that would come from us, they've indicated would come from our utility tax, our sales tax, and our property tax. And from my research and Ryan's and others, the taxing entities generally stay in the saddle about 5 years, and then they're out. They're not going to stay in the full 24 years like this is projected. Worst case scenario, say if Hooper doesn't make it, and they move on for whatever reason, we've seen it happen before, we're still liable for that. So I anticipate this payback from the city is probably going to increase. We're probably going to have to put in more to it. To make a clean development, I believe the developer, in fact, in our ordinance, it states that, you know, if there's certain zoning that's granted, it's the responsibility of the developer to provide the infrastructure. I think it would be smart on our end that we require them to do that. And from day one, we're making money, and not because it can take 3-4 years before we start generating money. We're going to have to subsidize this program. So in my mind, that CRA is a huge liability to us. You know, it's not smart development.
And let's be honest, the city doesn't have the money.
We don't have the money.
To participate
Right.
in saying, not like all these other taxing entities do.
Right.
We can't just say, oh yeah, we're gonna do this much money. We don't have that.
We don't.
Right?
And
And that was one of the planning commission's
Recommendation.
recommendations, was that we don't have a secret.
Well, one of the thoughts would be, what does the CRA cover? It covers sales tax, you're right. But it covers property tax.
Well, that's what's listed in here. They'll take a portion to cover our end of it. They could dip into our utility tax, our property tax, which is not very much.
So you'd have to agree to any of those. Give up property tax, it's no big deal.
Right.
There's not nothing there.
But,
Yeah.
but property taxes for the other entities is a whole lot of money.
Sure.
If they did it strictly on property taxes, you get a huge win.
But they're not going to stay for 24
That
years.
was my next.
They're not gonna do
brought
that.
up. So are you familiar with fire district? Do they stay in for 20 years, 25 years?
There's been entities asked for 15 or 20 years. And they've said, no, the max is what I've seen is between 10 and 12 is the max that they've stated. At a lower percentage, you know, they've asked for upwards of 100%. Of course, that's,
Yeah.
yeah, all of it. And
Longer it goes, the less.
you can only stay in for, in a 10-year period, the most like 50%.
So you're saying it's a little bit of a gamble on what they'll do. We don't know what they're going to commit
Well,
to.
they're asking for 70%.
Yes, yeah.
70% for 24 years.
But the school district hasn't agreed to that. They're just assuming. Yeah,
This is just LRB study.
Right.
So I've been to a lot of meetings with CRAs, and even with them, I'll tell you, I still don't feel 100% confident in my knowledge on them. Plus, we're brand new at this. Like some cities have already done a lot of commercial development and we're not. So I think we need to be really cautious about this. I feel confident that we need to have this miss. And I even feel comfortable, Debbie, how you're saying some biggers and some others. But I think I need more information. Yes, I do. Because like I say, I bet I've been to 8 meetings where they've explained all this, but I still couldn't say that I feel 100% and we've never done it. Like we're on foreign territory here in Hooper. So I think that's one thing we would want to work out with them is we need a little more assurance of what we're actually getting into. we don't have the money. You're right. We don't have $2 million to put in the lift station. We don't really have the availability to be able to say, you take our money, our sales tax. Like sometimes they'll say, oh, this business comes and you can have 5 years worth of sales tax. We don't have 5 years of sales tax to give up. So I think we need to hear more what it is. That still doesn't mean, though, I don't think we should come up with some parameters with them. So
I think what was just a tad frustrating is when we had that meeting on the 27th is I think they've known all along that this has been our hangup. It's not necessarily the commercial development. It's been how it's funding on the backs of Hooper citizens. And they've known that. And we've kind of indicated, well, can't you find a different solution, do some pioneer agreements with some of these other developers that are going to benefit from it and share the cost amongst those who are going to make the money. Hooper City is, we're going to make the least amount of money of everybody. The state of Utah, Weaver County, the developers. I mean, we're at the very bottom of the food chain, either last or second to the last. So in my mind, I think we need to protect every dime that we get off the taxes and let them find the solution. It's not our problem that it's not developable how they want it. They need to find the solution, I believe. And our ordinance does say under certain zonings that the developers are required to provide those services and infrastructure. We shouldn't be paying for it.
sometime I hope, though, that as a city, we become a little more financially
Sure.
robust.
Right.
Because all of us have sewer, and when we had sewer, no one came to us and said, okay, you have to pay, $500,000 for this lift station. Sometimes I feel bad because we have residents out there, like for instance, those people on 4700 that have been waiting for a long time because we cannot provide that. We can't. Even if we want to, Hooper City doesn't have $2 million to put in the lift station. We have a lot of our residents that are in the west end of Hooper that don't have it either. So I don't know. I mean, I think we need to hear and we need to figure out what it's going to be because plain and simple, we don't have the money to pay. I wish we did, but we don't. So we're going to have to come up with something. And they have expressed, when I've talked to them, they can work out we've got to work out some financing tools, or this can't go, plain and simple, because we don't have the money. We don't have $2 million to put in a lift station, but I think they do.
With Bryce, that's their issue to come up with the financing, that the city really, I feel if I was a developer, that would be my burden to come up with the infrastructure for my development. I wouldn't expect someone else to have to burden that or do all the legwork for it or anything. Because the fact of the matter is they're the ones who are going to be profiting the greatest from this project. I mean, there's just no doubt about it. We won't be profiting nearly as much as they will.
Well, it's a big problem statewide. There's not one meeting I don't go to when every city doesn't say the problem we have is with infrastructure. Every city is dealing with this. And it comes down to sewer and water. They will say at every meeting, I didn't realize I was going to be mayor or city council and the majority of my time is spent on sewer and water. Well, it is. Every city has the same problem. So when the governor again has his, like you mentioned, his 35,000 homes he wants built, every mayor is saying, okay, but then help us with our infrastructure then. You can't expect us to, how do we do it then? Like, how are we going to get this if we don't have the capability? So no, you're right. Somehow they've got to come up with a plan because we don't have the money to pay for it. We don't. And it shouldn't be, like we said, our responsibility to try to.
I think those costs factor into the affordable housing equation.
Yeah, they do.
Infrastructure costs. are
Yes.
cheap,
Yeah,
as we were talking about.
yeah,
And so when you talk about affordable housing, you just can't walk into a field and start throwing up houses. They're affordable,
Yeah.
There's so many things that happen before that.
yeah,
So,
yeah.
it's
Well, maybe we can give them some of our ideas and let them come up with ideas. And if tonight it's just going to be yes, kind of like we did with, okay, yes, we're in favor, but we need to have more, like, what are we going to do? We need to have a developers agreement. We need to work out the financing and then at least gives them something to start working on. what we're thinking of and something for Malcolm and staff to start working on what they would be agreeable with. One thought I had was if you would be all right with this, if someone would want to make the motion, I wondered if we should move public comments prior to that discussion, because if there's anybody that's here to say something, it might be that, you know, we have public comments before. So if we just did the approval of the minutes and then the check register, if anybody has any questions, that's really not a motion. But then just move the public comments just prior to the action item of the discussion and motion.
Section number 4. Public comments.
Yeah, yes, move 4 down to right before number 8. Because I think if people are here, they might be wanting to have comments maybe pertaining to Smiths. So I wondered if it might be more, and it's not a public hearing, it's just public comments. And another thing we talked about once about, and I don't know if this is up to you, but limiting public comments to maybe a half hour, you know, we kind of talked about that because it isn't a public hearing. If you want to do that, we don't have to, or if that's something, or we can leave it where it is. I just thought maybe it would be more applicable if that's what most of,
that sounds.
It's okay where it's at. We can limit it to 30.
limit it to 30 minutes, you're thinking? And then do you want to leave it up above, or do you want to just have it before we start to talk about the terrace drive?
We could move it on.
It's okay. It's,
I think it's fine where it is.
Yeah,
Don't finish.
because, I mean, public comments are open to anything. right?
Sure.
So they can talk about anything they want.
you took a sentence, he said, cannot take this.
Yes, it can be anything.
So.
Okay, so leave it where it is, and then you want to do it to 30?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Okay, well, I mean, we'll certainly have a discussion. I don't know if we really came up with anything we really
I just have a
agreed.
question on this ratification of check register.
Mhm.
Is that just for information?
It's just for information. So that's one thing we had talked about doing is, which I'm going to let Morgan explain that a little bit, how this has to do with paying bills and things. So we're going to try to do that. Have, so every time you can see the check register.
So that would show income for that and outgo for that.
So,
Is this to show?
oh no, so
checks?
it was just the check register. Yeah. So income, I think, is on your financials every time because the income just is like, if we get any sales tax, property tax usually only comes once a year. So it's not even necessarily like new income. So that, no, those were just expenses.
So I don't know if Morgan didn't know the answer, but Cammy might. So I noticed there was a few that were pertaining to JUB for, subdivisions, like subdivision. So are those costs being passed on to the developer or they are? Okay, for sure.
They-
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of, they didn't make application fees for all the subdivisions.
Okay. So maybe like Dale said, we might.
So
need
that
to
would
see the
show
income.
income.
So there'd be income
For
from
that.
that to offset those costs. for
Yeah, they
subdivision.
get mine. Yeah, they have built-in hours for engineering, and I just, calculate.
And then they pay the developer.
Yeah, put more ways together and I get them, not dirt cheap. I don't know how to operate it. Actually.
Well, so one question like we're saying with Morgan, so if, you know, we'll give you the check register every time for you to look through. So if there's any questions, those checks will not be mailed to those entities until you've had a chance to review those. But for example, like we'll have a meeting on June 17th where you can review those. But then our next meeting won't be until July 17th. And in that interim, if some of those she doesn't pay, we accrue a late fee. So we weren't really sure how you wanted to do that. Are you okay if you just get those? And if you have any questions, because we're really not, it's not a motion. You can let Morgan know or myself know or Cammy, because we, like I say, it's kind of, well, we can't. hold
Well,
checks
that's why
and
you
get-
got ratification, right? Because it may have already happened.
Well, yes, except for we're not, like
We're
she's got all
not,
that.
But they'll be.
Oh, yes, there could be unless if, yeah. So,
They're gonna be late, just,
okay.
yeah, I would think.
Oh, yeah.
Well, especially when that's gonna be like a month, you
Sure.
know, we
Yeah.
thought it might be. Because like that was one case, you know, going from like July or June to July, because some of them really do late fees. Was the format they came in okay
Yeah.
with how that was? You know, it tried to say like what those,
The description of it.
yeah, the description and the code, anything more you would want on that besides that check register like it was?
Just what we talked about, what's the.
Yeah, just that, just verify.
We always talk about general engineering or something.
Yeah.
Yeah,
There's so many general rubber stamps. It's like, okay, what subdivision, what engineering?
Right.
yeah,
What-
That would be nice. I know you've kind of indicated, you know, that it does, but I'd kind of like to see it in writing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
well, and that's one thing too.
Oh, what
See,
subdivision?
No,
Yeah.
I'm asking, you guys use that subdivision.
Yeah, and then if it's been offset by a payment from somebody else.
So within the JV invoice, the JV development review, and then in their rough down description, it shows what subdivision they were. If I type in too much invoice description, it's show everything, so
Yeah.
I'm more than welcome to send that or something. She's
Well, I'm just concerned that we're collecting for that invoice. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
The
We
work,
want to make sure that you're saying we collect if it's something we
Yeah.
actually paid for that.
right,
It's
yeah.
not, we collect you guys for categorizing, then I just get the invoice for you categorize, so.
I just want to make sure we're not paying for something we shouldn't be.
Well, that's something we need to do our fee schedule, which we talked about having a separate meeting to do that. Because that's a really good point. We want to make sure that we are charging enough fee that it's covering that.
Right.
In your guys' fee schedule, I don't know how great of a job you know, but you have a 1% escrow review fee that we're supposed to charge for subdivisions. If Derek wants to charge, but I don't know if it hasn't, but that'll be, you know, substantial, 15, 20 grand. Those are for the inspections that take place throughout the subdivision process. So you will be seeing pretty large ones coming through occasionally, and that'll, you know, account for some of JEB's costs, some of Jerry's while they go out and inspect these, you know, escrow items. Yeah, I mean, we're gonna need to work on categorizing the charge.
But we really do need to look at our fees because maybe we're not charging enough. Maybe they're not. So if they're not, and we might not be, so. But I don't know when you really wanted to talk about that fee schedule, because our next meeting is June 17th when we have to do the budget. So I don't know how long that will take. Do you think we'd have time? Well, that's kind of a separate. Do you think we'd have time to talk about the fee schedule then, or if not, it would be like July 17th before we get July?
Sorry, July.
Yeah.
July 6th.
Okay, then let's plan on doing that. We'll have that, and maybe we won't have a lot of other things. Because it's gonna take a little bit of time to go through that fee schedule. Yeah. But it really is something that we need to do, so.
Okay. Sounds good.
Yeah. Okay, anything else then? We'll that then. Okay, thank you.
I'll pull this chair out.
Yeah.